Hey, hello friends. Welcome to the third lecture of our data architecture series. In the first lecture, we had seen about the overall components of a data platform, and then we also had a look at what are the different types of storages, as in warehouse, the most trending topic, the lake house, and the data warehouse before that. Now, in this lecture, what we'll do is we'll have a look at some of the data transformations which are involved while moving the data from the source systems to the target. So what we do in while building a data and analytics platform, right? It's basically we have data in various source systems, which are the OLTP systems, right? And then we are moving that data to our warehouses or the data lake, right? So sources are there are various source systems, okay, which can be OLTP systems or the direct web applications or the various SaaS systems from where we are getting the data. It can be ERP, CRM, right? All different kinds of data, and eventually we have to move it either to the warehouse DWH, the traditional one, or there are always been a data lake, right? Or it could be a lake house, right? That's the third option, uh, which most of the teams have started, getting onto since last 1 year or so. So, so how do we move that data, right? When we have to move this data, we have to follow certain things. We have to transform the data, we have to clean the data, we have to validate it, right? There are various steps, and that is what is called as the data transformation process. Okay, so when we move the data from source systems to your targets, so this is what we are trying to build. Okay, we as a data platform architects or data engineers in the data and analytics world, these are the systems that we are trying to build. Okay, and these are the OLTP, the source systems. These are the OLTP systems. Now there are two main ways to do that, or the two main approaches, or the two main concepts, I would say most of you would be aware of, which is ETL or ELT. Okay, this is what we'll talk about. What's an ETL process? What's an ELT process? What are the various tools? And we'll keep it very simple. So we are not going to look at any of the complex things. We are just trying to understand the basic concepts in this lecture. So what is ETL? What does this stand for? Like, it's extract, transform, and load. What does that mean? You are going to extract the data from your source systems. Okay, this is where you extract the data. Then this is the place where you transform the data, and finally you load it. Okay, you are loading it into these systems. You load the data. So it's basically extract, transform, and load. What is ELT, right? Like extract, transform, and load. ELT is a very similar process. It is just that you first extract the data, you load it, and then you do the transform. So this transformation, right, which was happening here, right? Let's say in ETL, right? This is the place where we were doing the transformation. Okay, and then we were loading, right? So extract was the first, right? Second was this transformation, and the third step was load. In ELT, it's a bit different. We extract the data. The first step is exactly the same, but then we don't transform it. We load it directly. Okay, so source, the data will directly go to your target system. It can be a data lake, it can be a warehouse also, but after that you do the transformation. So a classic case is, right, you extract the data, you put it into your warehouse. The warehouse can be Redshift, it can be a Snowflake, and then you apply transformation after that. So this is one, this is two, and when you apply the transformations, right, this becomes your part 3. That is ELT process. Now, I think you might be aware, most of you would know about this ETL or ELT. Since this is an architecture series, we'll try to concentrate on what's the difference at a high level, and what are the key considerations while selecting these, right? What should you select? Whether you should go for an ETL process or you should go for an ELT process, right? Let me go to the next slide, and yeah, okay. So, sorry, let me just get rid of these things. And So when we are doing ETL, right? It's like basically you extract the data, you transform and load it. So if you have some ETL tools, right? Then it would make sense to do an ETL process if you have already invested in ETL tools. Like, ETL tools, there are various tools, right? People coming from the traditional world, you might be aware of Informatica, Talent, and with the modern data stack, right? There are tools like uh, 5tran is there, Airbyte is there, right? Um, so a lot of these tools would offer, data ingestion directly or to your data lake. They may offer some kind of transformations also. But if you have things like Informatica or Talent, predominantly you have been using a lot of ETL kind of a stuff earlier. Okay, so you can, if you still plan to use those tools, you can do that. You can do an ETL where you first extract the data, you transform it, and then you load it into the warehouse. The major difference, right, while selecting these, where when you would go for an ELT is when you want to use the compute power of your warehouse. Like, let's say you are using something like a Snowflake. Okay, now Snowflake is a cloud warehouse, very very powerful compute with multi clusters. You can have a lot of concurrent kind of a processing. Now in this case, right, let's say you extract the data, right, and you load it into the Snowflake, and then you do the transformations on top of this, right? Then you are doing all these transformations on top of this, right? This would make sense. So if you have this kind of an platform, if you have these tool set with you, you can think of doing a this kind of an architecture where you do ELT. Now how to decide that it's not just that, if you have Snowflake you should always go for this. Again, if it is like, you are using Snowflake and you have your cloud platform, right? It can be, let's say, AWS, or it can be Azure. Okay, so for an ETL kind of stuff, right? These tools we talked about. If you have third party tools, if you still want to use a cloud native tools, okay. So if you are using AWS, right, you would be probably using Glue or EMR. Okay, if you are into Azure, you may use ADF, or some of you may also think of using like Databricks. Okay, so if you want to do an ETL into this, you can do that if you have that expertise, right? So these are all majorly what it is, Spark. Okay, if you have the Spark expertise and you want to utilize the power of Spark, okay, you can go for an ETL kind of approach. So first you extract the data, you apply all these changes, okay, do the transformation, and then you load it into Snowflake. Load it into Snowflake finally. Here, right, you are pushing all your coding into Spark. Okay, now what are the advantages? Right, see, Spark being open source, right? Today you are using Glue or EMR. Tomorrow, if you want to push that code to Azure, right, you can still do that. If you plan to use, let's say, something like, Google Cloud in further, right, then the migration becomes easy. Okay, this is where you can think of using something like ETL. But if you want simplicity, right, because Snowflake is all NC SQL, right? If you want that kind of a simplicity, now be it Snowflake or be it Redshift also, right? You want to do everything using just plain SQLs, then you can think of an ELT approach. So what will happen there is, okay, you have extracted data, you have loaded into Snowflake, and then for the transformation, right, instead of Spark, see here we were using Spark. Okay, here you will have to write only SQL. Okay, writing only SQL, right? You can write SQL. There are options for PL SQL kind of a code, right? Not exactly PL SQL, but in Snowflake also, right? You can use, I think, JavaScript to do that. So you still have a way to do that. So it's basically a choice whether you want to use an ETL approach or an ELT approach. So based on that, you can take a call. So what are the things to consider here, right? Okay, let me just erase this, and I'll use this same space. So either it is ETL or it is, ELT. What are the key considerations that you will use? Okay, where basically it comes down to where you want to push your transformation logic. Okay, where you want to push your transformation logic. This was ETL, right, and this is ELT. So whether you want to push it to your cloud provider, okay, cloud native tools, using cloud native ETL tools, I would say, or you want to use the warehouse. Okay, you want to use the warehouse. Okay, that second is whether you want to think from a perspective of whether you can, whether there is a multi-cloud strategy that you may have in future. Okay, or you may have to port the code, right? Then you can also think of it because it is Spark. Yeah, even now, see, in there might be some debate right now. Snowflake does offer Snowpark and the other things. So even yes, those are the considerations that you can think. If you still want to use uh, Snowflake and Power of Spark, then you can consider those things, right? But this is a very simple options that I'm trying to give, right? Which you can think of. Now, for ELT, it is more about having simplicity and using SQL, I would say, for your all operations. And then third would be also right whether right the if you look at the ETL versus ELT concepts, right? We have not exactly spoken about it because I've assumed that the audience of this lecture would be aware of that. It's basically if you want see ETL because of the processing, right? You extract the data, you transform, you load. It takes time, right? For the user to get the data, right? If you have extracted the data, if the source has provided the data and the transformation takes couple of hours, user will get the data only after 2 hours. But in ELT, right, you get the data as soon as possible, ASAP, right? Because source has sent the data, you don't do any transformation, you just load it directly. Then anyone who wants to use that raw data as is, right, they can still go ahead and use that. Many machine learning engineers, data scientists, right, they may need the raw data. They don't want the cleansed data, the transform data. So for them, it also helps. So yeah, I think that's it I wanted to cover here. Basically, what are different types of transformations and ELT and ETL. There are still a lot of things that we can discuss, but I'll stop here and maybe in some of our next lecture we'll try to cover a few more things. Yeah, thank you.